वल्लभ धारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारी यशोदानंदन ब्रिज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रिज जन रंजन यमुना तीरवन चारी यमुना तीरवन चारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारी यशोदानंदन ब्रिज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रिज जन रंजन यमुना तीरवन चारी यमुना तीरवन चारी हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे जय राधा वृंदावन बिहारी जय राधा वृंदावन बिहारी जय राधा वृंदावन बिहारी जय राधा वृंदावन बिहारी जय कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम जय कृष्ण बलराम जय राधा कृष्णा जय राधा कृष्णा जय राधा कृष्णा जय राधा कृष्णा जय जय जगन्नाथ जगन्नाथ बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा जय जय जगन्नाथ जगन्नाथ बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा जय लड्डू गोपाल जय लड्डू गोपाल जय लड्डू गोपाल जय लड्डू गोपाल जय नरसिंह देव जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय नरसिंह देव जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय पंच तत्व जय पंच तत्व जय पंच तत्व जय पंच तत्व जय षड गोस्वामी जय षड गोस्वामी जय षड गोस्वामी जय षड गोस्वामी जय गुरु परंपरा जय गुरु परंपरा जय गुरु परंपरा जय गुरु परंपरा जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरे कृष्णा दीपा माता जी हरे कृष्णा सुबरो प्रभु धन्यवाद प्रणाम
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु धन्यवाद प्रणाम प्रभु
हरे कृष्णा वाणी माता जी धन्यवाद प्रणाम
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी धन्यवाद प्रणाम
We will now begin by just asking permission from the parampara. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजाताम् सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितान्तां सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्ता राधाकान्ता नमोऽस्तुते तप्त काञ्चना गौरांगी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधारा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयम् उदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। नमः पङ्कजनाभाय नमः पङ्कजमालिने नमः पङ्कजनेत्राय नमस्ते पङ्कजाङ्ग्रहे। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नामिने गौरतुषे नमः। नमो ब्राह्मण्यदेवाय गोब्राह्मणहिताय च जगद्दिताय कृष्णाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन् इति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधारा श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 रामा राम रामा हरे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे रामा राम रामा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे रामा राम रामा हरे हरे कृष्णा। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्येश्वरं नमो पवित्रो पवित्रो वा सर्वावस्थं गतोऽपि वा यस्मरेत् पुण्डरीकाङ्क्षं सभयाभ्यन्तरं शुचिः श्रीविष्णु हरे कृष्ण। Hare Krishna to all the devotees. I hope you are able to hear me.
Yes, Prabhu.
Start sharing my screen. Hare Krishna. So today we will continue with Prahlad Maharaj's prayers. I feel I'm very fortunate to have an opportunity to study this chapter again and recite these prayers. Yesterday I spent some time also once again just to go through it, and I found that how beautiful these prayers are. I will continue the prayers from verse 35 to verse 50, and then 50 to 55 is essentially the Lord blessing Prahlad Maharaj. But before that, I'll start by offering my gratitude to all the senior devotees who were assembled over here, Lilananda Prabhu, Hanumataji, for giving me this opportunity to remain in that Krishna consciousness at least for an hour and maybe a little bit more when I prepare for these classes. So outside of these classes, again, we get back into that material world. And Maya tends to take grip of us. It's only when we take shelter of Harikatha or Harinam that we are able to maintain our consciousness in the right direction. So to start with a recap, um, let's try to understand and take a look at what has transpired so far in chapter 9. And before we dive into the detailed prayers of Prahlad Maharaj from verse 35 onwards, let's first recount the flow and the key moments covered in the opening 35 verses of this chapter. So these prayers are actually pretty long, and I was listening to Varangadarshan Prabhu, and he was mentioning that in the Bhagavatam, I have not completed reading the Bhagavatam. He said that this is one of the longest prayers, around 42 prayers, 42 verses are there. I think there's another set of prayers from Brahma in the 11th canto, which also is of similar length or maybe more. But these are so beautiful and very, very, they just straight get to your heart. At the beginning of the chapter, we learned that Lord Narasimhadev has just slain the demon Hiranyakashipu. And he is still in that mood of anger. He's sitting on a throne. And that's when Lord Brahma and the other demigods, they would want to approach him, but they're terrified by the Lord's fierce anger. They have never seen something like this before. And they are at a complete loss. That none can, calm him down. And not even Lakshmi, who is always there with him, can do it. And it is then that, Brahmaji, he thinks about Prahlad Maharaj, who's a young devotee. And he encourages young Prahlad to approach the Lord, trusting that the Lord has a very deep affection for his devotees. And this sets the stage for, that we see this entire beautiful relationship between Prahlad Maharaj and Narasimhadev, where the Lord's anger, tremendous rage, it all subdues, it melts in the face of pure devotion from a pure devotee. At first, what we learn is that Prahlad Maharaj has no fear. After Brahmaji asks him to approach the Lord, the first thing he does is he offers obeisances at the lotus feet of Lord Narasimhadev. And the Lord is, of course, very much moved by this gesture of his pure devotee, sincere surrender of the pure devotee. And the Lord places his lotus hand upon Prahlad's head. This instantly grants him Brahmagnan. And this, we have seen it, the Lord or his paraphernalia, when we come in touch with them, we completely get spiritualized. This also happens to Dhruva Maharaj when the Lord touches his head with the conch shell. That is the power. And here the Lord instantly bestows Brahmagnan to Prahlad Maharaj. What this shows also in this moment is that on one side, of course, the Lord can be very, very dreadful, and he can be a personality to fear to the non-devotees. He can be terrifying also. But on the other side, he's extraordinarily affectionate to his true devotees. Today morning, when I was just after the Aarti, I was chanting, and in between got a little bit of time, I was just thinking about Bilva Mangal Thakur. So if you Google up Bilva Mangal Thakur, you will get an image of Bilva Mangal Thakur. He's doing kirtan or he's chanting, and little Krishna is sitting in front like this, and he's smiling. It is said that whenever Bilamangal Thakur used to chant or do kirtan, Krishna would come and sit there and listen to him. So that is how extraordinarily affectionate the Lord is towards his pure devotees, towards his true devotees. And by the touch of the Lord, Prahlad Maharaj was, of course, completely transformed, and he was freed from all material contamination. And this shows also how bhakti alone can vanquish all fear and negativity in an instant. It is not a stepwise process. So you have the different kinds of yoga in that yoga ladder to ultimately maybe get to bhakti, but there is no rule that you need to take the steps. You can immediately get right to the top with an elevator, but the condition is that it has to be pure bhakti. So when we are chanting every day, when we are remembering the Lord, how focused are we on that chanting? How focused are we when we chant and we say that Krishna, hey, internal potency of the Lord, please engage me in your service. That is what we ask for when we chant. And every time we chant with that intention, with that right attitude, Krishna is there. And he's scrubbing out all that dirt inside in our heart so that we can see ourselves. We have actually forgotten who we are. And when we are able to see ourselves, all the fear goes away. Why does fear in the first place arise? That fear arises, as Prabhupada says, because of this strong identification with this material body. The material body puts us in this trap that we begin to think that we are this material body. And that strong identification, that strong possessiveness results in fear. And our aspiration should be to get to that stage wherein there is no fear. Prabhupada, in his purports, he gives the analogy of the lion's cub. He says that we are fearful of the lion, but the cubs are not fearful of the lion. Why? Similarly, because of our identification in this human body, we get fearful. We need to vanquish all that fear and negativity, and we can do that in an instant when we engage in bhakti. So, in Prahlad Maharaj's initial statements, there are some very clear themes that come out in the early verses. So first of all, what we see is that Prahlad Maharaj speaks very modestly, very humbly. He declares his own inability to properly glorify the Lord. That is the mood of a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava never believes or thinks that he has arrived, that he is entitled. And here Prahlad Maharaj, in those initial verses itself, sets the mood there. declaring his own inability. And he clarifies that no amount of birth, wealth, austerity, education can satisfy the Supreme Lord. It's only pure devotion. Na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam va. So in Shikshashtakam prayers also, when we recite them, we say that we don't want all these material gains, wealth, glory, beauty, followers, because this doesn't help us in our devotional journey's progress. And he gives an example of a low-born devotee, somebody who could be a Chandala, you might call. And he says that a Brahmana who's not in the mood of bhakti, but is only in the mood of, ritualistic progress, comparing that with a low-born devotee, a Chandala, who's actually a devotee, he says that low-born person is more dear to the Lord. And they surpass the proud, qualified Brahmana who lacks bhakti. So this kind of also reinforces the universality of Krishna consciousness. No personal qualification is needed. And this is seen in Prahlad Maharaj's humility. All we need is the Lord's mercy. And Prabhupada mentions that, when he went to the West, I was reading, I think, Rompad Swami Maharaj, one of his articles also, in that he says that he went to the West and he transformed so many people who were not Brahmanas, but they became Brahmanas. And that was because they embraced bhakti. So the Lord is moved by sincere intention and the depth of love in the devotee's heart. He is not moved by external designations. Now let's look at the Lord's mercy and fearlessness also. So another theme that resonates in this material world is that this is a very, very fearful place. Material life is full of fear and suffering. And even the demigods, our parents, and fathers like Hiranyakashipu cannot offer true protection without the Lord's favor. So if we have the mercy of the Lord, we are okay. If we don't have that mercy, we are not safe. And only by taking the shelter of the lotus feet can one become fearless. So that fear, again, as I said, is coming because of our material conditioning, because we are bound by our false ego. And therefore we get plagued by our anxieties. So if one truly takes shelter of the Lord, the fear evaporates. As I mentioned, the fierce form of Lord Narasimhadev can be terrifying for the non-devotees. But that same form is very compassionate for devotees like Prahlad Maharaj. And here the lesson is to focus on the Lord's feet. That's the key to arising above those material illusions and the fear and danger that is there in our minds. So the key lessons that we learn in those first 35 verses are that a devotee's prayers alone can pacify the Lord. Not even Brahma or Shiva could manage it. Only Prahlad's devotion does the trick. Qualifications don't impress the Lord. Bloodline, opulence, scholarship, they mean little without bhakti. And Prahlad, though he was a child, stands calmly in front of the Lord. Terrifying aspect. He was in a very, very terrifying form, but Prahlad was able to stand, and he was a child, not even 10 years old, 5 years or 6 years old. And the Lord shows his universal mercy.
Hare
He
Krishna.
responds to all kinds of genuine devotion in any circumstance. That shows his reciprocal nature. He is affectionate to his devotees.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Prabhu, yes.
Hare Krishna. Dandot Pranam, Prabhuji.
Dandot Pranam, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem, Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
How are you?
I'm good, 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 Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Dandot Pranam, Mataji. Can you see me? Can you see me? Can
I'll
you see
continue,
me?
Prabhu. I can see you, Prabhu. I
No,
can see you.
you can see me. I want
I can
to
hear you
show
also.
something. Yeah, 1 second, 1 second. I want to show something. Signal is bad or my mobile is dying. Actually, my mobile is dying. But I wanted to show something. 1 second. Ready?
I'll stop sharing, Prabhu. Then you can maybe then.
Yeah, maybe. No, I'm here in VSK. So I thought I'll show the cows for a minute.
Yes, Prabhu. Very bold.
In between the lecture, little darshan of Govinda and and goes.
Very nice, Prabhu.
Arey, Prabhuji, what is this? Some reason my 1 second. I don't know why my screen is. Yeah, now I can. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Yeah. See, this is by the inspiration of His Holiness Bhakti much. I'm doing this.
So much of spinach, all spinach, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, my mobile is dying. I'm gone. Sorry.
Okay, okay, Prabhu. Very good. Let's continue. Yes, we'll continue. And so basically, what we learn is that the humble and approach is super important for us to connect with the Lord, and that is only possible when we are humble and we build more devotion. So as we transition to the 35th verse and the further prayers, by verse 35, as I mentioned, the Lord has put his hand on Prahlad Maharaj and has granted him deeper realization. And Prahlad Maharaj recognizes that unmotivated devotion is the only means to please the Supreme. And now let's move into the next section of the prayers, which are more pure bhakti. So, since these prayers are so beautiful, we'll recite the prayers, and then I'll request one of you to please recite also the translation. Sattvatma yonir ativismitya ashritobjam kalena tivra tapasa parishuddha bhavah त्वामात्मनीशा भुवि गन्धमिवाति सूक्ष्मं भूतेन्द्रियाश्रय मये विततं ददर्श. Hare Krishna. Does anyone want to read the translation?
Can I read, Prabhuji?
Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandar Pranam. Translation by Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Lord Brahma, who celebrated Lord Brahma, who celebrated as Atma Yoni, having been born without a mother, was struck with wonder. Thus he took shelter of the lotus flower, and when he had been purified after undergoing severe austerities for many hundreds of years, he could see that the cause of all causes, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was spread throughout his own body and senses, just as aroma, although very subtle, is perceived in the earth. Hare Krishna.
So thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. So Brahmaji had to do austerities for many celestial years. He was just meditating, doing tapasya. And it is after that tapasya only he was able to perceive the Supreme Lord extending everywhere. That is when he got that realization. He was able to get that perception. And the example, the analogy used here is the subtle aroma in the earth. So Brahma is Atmayoni, which is he's self-born, he's Aja. And he undergoes such severe austerities and then comes to a profound realization. He understands that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pervading across everything, across his senses, his body. And the example used here is the fragrance pervades the earth. So Prabhupada in his purport, he uses the analogy of that, wherein he says that a seed translates into a plant which provides flowers. And where is that flower coming from? It is coming from the earth. So we need to understand that here one important point that is coming in is this entire Achintya Beda Beda Tattva, that is simultaneously one and different. While we may have the qualities of the Lord, we are not one and same with the Lord. Quantitatively, he is different. And Prabhupada, he in his purport, he emphasizes on this and he refutes that entire Mayavadi claim of Aham Brahmasmi, which is I am God. He emphasizes that rather the Lord's energies, they spread everywhere. And each individual Jivatma is part of that larger energy. This is the essence of the Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. That we are one in Lord with the quality, but different in quantity. And he goes on to use this example, as I mentioned, that when we see a flower, it has beautiful colors. All these colors are hidden within the earth. Where do they come from? It's not coming from the seed only, right? So they're all there. And the Lord's presence similarly is there everywhere. It is not invisible. It's not visible to our material eyes. That's about it. We don't have that chakshu to see the Lord everywhere. And to see the Lord face to face, we need to be purified. And that purification will happen through what Brahmaji did. That is austerity and devotion, two things that are needed. That is the austerity, that effort has to be there, the bhakti we have to put in. And then with the Lord's mercy, we will be able to perceive him everywhere. So Brahma's tapasya here is an example for us that the more we purify ourselves through devotional service, through chanting, the more we can see Krishna and everything. And I'm sure that we are already come this long journey. We are in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. All of you, I'm sure, I'm experiencing that. At least I see that, the more we chant, I feel it that, I'm not saying that I'm purified, but at least I can feel that, that I'm perhaps making that one small infinitesimal millimeter infinitesimal of a millimeter progress, at least I might be making. Let's recite the next verse, 36. Evam sahasra vadanangri shirat karoru nasadya karna nayana bharanaya yu dhadyam mayamayam sad upalakshita sannivesham drishtva mahapurushamapa mudam virinchaha. Anyone wants to read the translation? Hare Krishna, Sunil Prabhu. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Translation. Lord Brahma could then see you possessing thousands and thousands of faces, feet, heads, hands, thighs, noses, ears, and eyes. You were very nicely dressed, being decorated and bedecked with varieties of ornaments and weapons. Seeing you in the form of Lord Vishnu, your symptoms and form being transcendental, your legs extending from the lower planets, Lord Brahma achieved transcendental bliss. So here we see that Lord Brahma is seeing the Supreme Lord with innumerable faces, limbs, ornaments, and he attains transcendental bliss after he sees this. In the previous verse, we saw that there are two things that are needed, which is austerity and devotion. And of course, the Lord's mercy is needed. And here Lord Brahma was blessed to see the Supreme Lord as Vishnu, adorned with his innumerable faces and limbs. So, importantly, what we need to keep in mind, and from Srila Prabhupada's purports, is that the Lord is not impersonal, and self-realization does not stop at an impersonal effulgence, that is the Brahman effulgence. It directly culminates in beholding the Lord's personal transcendental form face to face. And Prabhupada says that Brahma's vision was not imaginary. Says the Lord's form is Satchit Ananda Vigraha, that is eternal, full of knowledge, and ever blissful. So such a form is not a manifestation of illusion. Rather, the impersonal Brahman is the effulgence emanating from that supreme form. Sometimes, there is some concoctions are made out that the form comes out of the Brahman effulgence. And it's actually the other way around, where Prabhupada says that the Brahman effulgence is emanating from that of the supreme form. In the Bhagavad Gita also, and Prabhupada mentions this, is that Arjuna similarly sees Krishna's universal form. And he declares Param Brahma, Supreme Brahman. And so, and beyond this universal form that is there lies his two-armed personal form, which is even more confidential. So we need to build that jnana and to build that knowledge that will lead us to this relationship with Krishna. Not merely just aspiring for absorption into that impersonal effulgence, but rather building that knowledge by which we can get Krishna Prema. So now that Brahma has had the vision of the Lord, now we'll continue to the next verse. Tasmai bhavan hayashiras tanuvam hibibrad vedadruhav atibalau madhukaita bhakyau atvanayat shutri ganamscha rajastamascha satvam tava priyatamam tanumaman nanti. Hare Krishna. Does someone want to read the translation?
Yes, Prabhu, I will read.
Yes,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna. Yes, Prabhu. My dear Lord, when you appeared as Greva with the head of a horse, you killed two demons known as Madhu and Kaitaba, who were full of the modes of passion and ignorance. Then you delivered the Vedic knowledge to Lord Brahma. For this reason, all the great saints accept your forms as transcendental, untinged by material qualities. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So here Prahlad is glorifying how the Lord appeared as Hayagriva and he saved or rescued the entire Vedic knowledge from the demons Madhu and Kaitaba. Yeah. And the two modes of passion and ignorance are mentioned here. And these are personified in these demons who threaten to disrupt the Vedic wisdom that guides humanity. And that is also one of the reasons why we are more encouraged to stay in that mode of sattva. Because passion and ignorance is not conducive for our spiritual progress, for us to actually realize who we really are. And come to that conclusion, we need to be situated in that mode of goodness, first of all. And that is why the yama and niyama, the do's and don'ts, are there for us to follow. So in Srila Prabhupada's purport, he mentions that devotees also face attacks. They face attacks, symbolic or literal, from those who misunderstand or oppose spiritual truths. And we have seen this. There are many examples also in the recent past. There have been umpteen number of examples in our neighboring country also, wherein devotees have faced attacks from people who opposed their spiritual faith. But Prabhupada says we needn't fear because the Lord is transcendental and is always prepared to protect the devotees and uphold the Vedas. Prabhupada also says that the form of the Lord is never material. Whenever he appears, he does so in his original spiritual form. So, a common man or a fool, as a Muda might think that, how is it possible that the Lord, the Supreme Lord, appears in a particular form? He does that, he comes for a purpose, finishes his pastime, and then returns. So, whether as Hayagriva or as any other incarnation, he ensures that all the sincere seekers who are there, right, can access the Vedas, the Vedic wisdom for spiritual advancement. Verse 38. Itham tiryag rishideva jashavattareir lokan vibhavas vayasi hamsi jagat pratipan dharmam mahapurusha pasi yuganu vrittam channakalau yad abhavastriyogatha sattvam. Translation. In this way, my Lord, you appear in various incarnations as human beings, an animal, a great saint, a demigod, a fish, or a tortoise, thus maintaining the entire creation in different planetary systems and killing the demoniac principles. According to the age, O my Lord, you protect the principles of religion. In the age of Kali, however, you do not assert yourself as the supreme personality of Godhead, and therefore you are known as Triyuga, or the Lord who appears in three yugas. So the Lord appears in many forms, and that's why I put it in the title as Lord Chaitanya's hidden incarnation, because here he mentions you protect the principle of religion. In the age of Kali, however, you do not assert yourself as a supreme personality of Godhead. Can anyone, share their thoughts as to why in Kali Yuga the Lord does not assert himself as a supreme personality of Godhead? It is there in the purport by Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada speaks about the bogus devotees. There are so many bogus people are there who claim to be God. And that is why uh, Srila Prabhupada draws the parallel to, Mahaprabhu, who is indeed the Supreme Lord in Kali Yuga, but appears as a devotee. So that it prevents confusion with many fraudulent incarnations, he says, that surface in this age.
I think
So
the other thing is probably that he also guides us for Yug Dharma, right, to chant the holy names as well. So, because Krishna, when he came, he did not told how to proceed in Kali Yuga. So, but Lord Chaitanya told us how to proceed in Kali Yuga. So,
exactly, Prabhu. Exactly. So when the God comes, one of his goals is to establish Dharma. And in the case of Chaitanya Prabhu, he taught us the Sankirtana, that is chanting the holy name, the way out from the cycle of birth and death in this yuga. Because that is the only prime process of deliverance in this yuga for us. So Prahlad describes the Lord's multifaceted, incarnations, different forms that he takes. But all this is for one purpose, which is to protect that cosmic order. And while, he comes for in each age for some specific mission, like either rescuing Prahlad or the Vedas, in that current Kali Yuga, he remains Channaha, which is hidden. Channaha Kalau. So he remains hidden in this particular age. And the only way we can, discover him is through the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Verse 39. Here we see the struggles of a conditioned mind. Naitan manastava katha suvikuntanatha sampriyate durita dushtam asadhu tivram kamaturam harsha shokha bhayesha shayanan anartham tasmin katham tava gatim vimbrish shami dinaha. Translation. My dear Lord of the Vaikuntha planets, where there is no anxiety, my mind is extremely sinful and lusty, being sometimes so-called happy and sometimes so-called distressed. My mind is full of lamentation and fear, and it always seeks more and more money. Thus, it has become most polluted and is never satisfied in topics concerning you. I am therefore most fallen and poor. In such a status of life, how shall I be able to discuss your activities? I think we can relate to this. Uh, so Prahlada is acknowledging, the challenges of a conditioned mind, how it gets plagued by lust, greed, constant dissatisfaction. And he wonders, how can such a mind that is always chasing wealth, pleasure, food, taste, ever be absorbed, in the glories of the Lord? And that's where, Srila Prabhupada in his purport, he comments that anything that is not connected with Krishna is effectively sinful, because it distracts us from our real duty, which is surrendering to Him. So that's one of the reasons why we offer bhoga, we eat only prasad, we try and chant regularly, we hear Harikatha, we go to the temple, offer our obeisances, so that we are trying to engage our senses. As long as we are in this material body, Prabhujis and Matajis, we are trapped in this material body, Maya will play a role in terms of kind of, showing us all those things, because we experience this world through our five senses. There is no other way for us to experience it. But the choice that we can make is what we experience. I think that is with us. When we experience the spiritualized objects, they are no longer material. Prabhupada, in one of his purports also, he mentions that even though Prahlad had the body which was, as he has inherited from the demon, from the asuras. So in fact, the blood that was running in him was that of an asura. But because he chose to be engaged only in bhakti and pure devotional service, he became fully spiritualized. He was not anything material. Even that body is not material. So Prabhupada says that the mind's pollution, the pollution in our mind, the dirt in our mind can be cleaned primarily only through chanting the Lord's holy names. And when the mind is cleansed, that is when we begin to see Krishna's presence rather first. We don't begin to see Krishna immediately. In all our endeavors, whatever we do, we begin to see Krishna. We think of him, at least. And gradually you will witness that your cycle of worry, of lamentation will come down. It will subside. So I recently had an experience wherein I was in Trichy and had this opportunity to be in Srirangam. And my experience was that when I was there, we were so involved in everything that was spiritual. We had completely forgotten about everything material on one side, but also about our worries, everything else. All those lamentations had all gone away. So that is the power of keeping yourself in that right association, in that right environment, eating the right kind of food or prasadam, doing the right things, which is, doing your chanting, hearing Harikatha, going to the temples, taking darshan of the Lord. And here we see Prahlad's humility also. He's showing himself just like any other common man. And he's teaching us that despite the fact that the world around us is so tumultuous, is so full of distractions, he's telling us that we must fill our minds with the sound of Krishna rather than the noise of material cravings. The choice is ours. The free will is with us. We need to make a choice. We'll move to the next verse. I think somebody is unmuted. So if everybody can mute themselves. Verse 40. Jivvaikatoच्युत विकर्षति मा वितृप्ता शीष्णोऽन्यतस्त्वग् उदरं श्रवणं कुतश्चित् घ्राणोऽन्यतश्चपल दृक्वा च कर्मशक्तिर्भव्यसपत्न्या इव गेह पतिं lunanti. Translation: My dear Lord, O infallible one, My position is like that of a person who has many wives, all trying to attract him in their own way. For example, the tongue is attracted to palatable dishes, the genitals to sex with an attractive woman, and the sense of touch to contact with soft things. The belly, although filled, still wants to eat more, and the ear, not attempting to hear about you, is generally attracted to cinema songs. The sense of smell is attracted to yet another side. The restless eyes are attracted to the scenes of sense gratification, and the active senses are attracted elsewhere. In this way, I am certainly embarrassed. And so here, Prahlad is comparing the uncontrolled senses to multiple wives, each dragging the soul in different directions. When I read this verse, I was a bit actually got me thinking that, first of all, such a young child is having such profound realizations. And that is only, of course, with the mercy of the Lord and because of his pure devotion. And Prahlad is offering a very vivid analogy, actually, where we can actually visualize this conflict and this entire distraction, where the senses are like rival wives, each demanding attention from the householder's mind. Uh, we cannot experience it. We should not experience that, but it's a very vivid analogy that is there. There are movies also that are there, right, where the hero, the protagonist, is caught between two wives or two women, and the kind of challenges he faces. And the tongue craving for tasty foods, I can definitely connect with that part a lot. And the ears yearning for mundane songs, eyes lingering on sense objects, right? The moment you see something attractive, immediately you start following it. And then your mind gets into action. The monkey mind will get into action. So all these only create embarrassment. He says, in this way, I'm certainly embarrassed. It creates embarrassment and conflict. So what Prabhupada mentions in his purport is that the grihastha life, the household life, is not about indulging your senses. It is but about regulating them for spiritual benefit. We cannot escape the fact that we are in this material body. When we are in this material body, the only way for us to experience anything is through the five senses. But if we allow the five senses to run uncontrolled like wild horses, right, it will be quite detrimental to us. We need to keep in mind that the form that we have been given, the human body that has been given for one purpose, and that is God realization, self-realization and God realization. So if we remain slaves to our senses, to the so-called wives, we will remain in the mode of ignorance. But if we train our senses to relish the spiritual matters, spiritual activities like hearing katha, hearing Krishna katha, chanting, engaging our eyes and seeing the deity, then each sense becomes a doorway to liberation. So what can be a liability on one side can also be a huge opportunity on the other side. The message for us is to convert all these our five senses that are there, or utilize our five senses as opportunities for us to move one step closer to Krishna. Otherwise, we will be caught in this cycle of birth and death, and we'll be continuously going up and down, which we don't want. In verse 41, Prahlad Maharaj says, Evam swakarma patitam bhavam vaitaranyam anonya janma marana shana bhita bhitam pashyan janam swa paravigraha vaira maitram hanteti parachara piprihi Mudham adya. Translation: My dear Lord, you are always transcendentally situated on the other side of the river of death. But because of the reactions of our own activities, we are suffering on this side. Indeed, we have fallen into this river and are repeatedly suffering the pains of birth and death and eating horrible things. Now kindly look upon us, not only upon me, but also upon all others who are suffering, and by your causeless mercy and compassion, deliver us and maintain us. Prahlad Maharaj is asking not just to deliver him, but all the souls who are stuck in birth and death in this cycle over here. So much of compassion. Prahlad is showing exemplary compassion over here for such a young child at his age. He's showing so much of compassion. He's noticing that all the souls are trapped in this Bhava Vaitaranyam, that is the Vaitarani river, the river of material existence. So he says that the Lord is residing beyond this river of death. It is the Jiva's own karma that is keeping us drowning here. So it's our choice that we have decided to be in this Vaitarani river, in this river of death. We want to be here. But we are forgetting that it is out of our own choice, and actually the Lord is just waiting outside on the other side. And another thing that Prabhupada mentions is the hallmark of a true Vaishnava, like Prahlad Maharaj. He says that the hallmark of a true Vaishnava is that he doesn't focus on his own personal salvation alone. He desires the salvation of all. So this is the difference between somebody who is self-centered versus somebody who is more has a more broad-minded approach. So, and Prabhupada calls such devotees as Goshtyanandis. He says that those who find bliss in helping others, they are not Bhajananandis who may only seek personal liberation. So, real spiritual progress must include helping others, awakening their dormant Krishna consciousness. So everybody has that dormant Krishna consciousness. In everybody, it is there, it is existent. It is just that it is in varying degrees of dormancy. And it'll take varying degrees of effort for that dormancy to resurrect and stand up so that that Krishna consciousness awakens. And it is only through that generosity of a pure devotee who will pray for us and who's praying for everyone's salvation that we would be able to come out of this river. And at some point in all our lives, we have been touched by some devotees who have actually prayed for us and who have awakened that dormancy. In my particular instance, I'm very grateful that I had that one conversation with Lilananda Prabhu, which actually brought me into Krishna consciousness and awoke that dormancy for me. And similarly, I'm sure all of you who are on this call also have had those experiences. And I hear because someone triggered, something triggered that awakening of your Krishna consciousness. And just like someone else triggered that for us, we should also be thinking about others, not just our own liberation or our own salvation. The next verse, we'll look at the Lord's mercy. कोनत्र तेखिल गुरु भगवन् प्रयास उत्तारणेस्य भव संभव लोपहेतो मूढ़ेषु वै महद् अनुग्रह आर्त बंधो किं तेन ते प्रिय जनान् अनुसेवताम्नः. Translation: O my Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, original spiritual master of the entire world, what is the difficulty for you who manages the affairs of the universe in delivering the fallen souls, engaged in your devotional service? You are the friend of all suffering humanity, and for great personalities, it is necessary to show mercy to the foolish. Therefore, I think that you will show your causeless mercy to persons like us who engage in your service. So Prahlad is noting that it's not difficult for the Lord to deliver conditioned souls, that he is a friend to everyone. He is highlighting that the Lord can very easily rescue the fallen souls. So the question is, why doesn't he automatically save everyone? What is the reason for that? Anybody? So the answer is the free will. As I had mentioned, we have chosen to be in that Vaitarni river, in that river of death. It's our choice. And we have never made an effort, or we have never made the kind of, engaged in those austerities and put in that effort to get the love of the Lord. So when we make a choice to seek out for that love of the Lord, put in that effort to gain that love of the Lord, and when the Lord then is happy with that effort, then he blesses us with his mercy. That is when we can be saved. So Lord is indeed, Prabhupada says, is indeed Artha Bandhu. He is the friend of all. He's a friend of distressed. Yet he waits for all the souls to turn to him. We are turning away from him because it's our choice. And as soon as we show, he says, we show a spark of sincere surrender, the Lord will flood us with his grace. But if we remain rebellious, as we are, at least as I am, then he is also respecting your independence. He's saying, "Theek hai bhai. Okay, you want to experience this pain. I'm trying to tell you that this is not good for you. Fine." So I think in one of the purports of Prabhupada's, in somewhere else that I've read, that he uses this analogy of the fan, that when the child goes and puts his, I think it was Prabhupada himself, that Prabhupada's son, I think, Prabhupada doesn't, I was watching this um, Srila Prabhupada's that Abhay Charan videos on YouTube, that one of his son goes and puts his finger in the fan, and then he gets hurt. So Prabhupada then tells his wife that, he will learn now. So similarly, the Lord is also so merciful that he gives us a safety net, and he put us into this quarantine world, which is a safe place to experience what we think that we should experience, but what we are actually not supposed to experience. So he respects our independence. He provides us a safe environment, but he is waiting for us. He's waiting for us to turn to him. So what is holding all of us back? We should turn to him. And that is so. And Prabhupada also explains about the importance of serving the devotees, building that mood of a servant of the servant. And he says that that is the surest way to attain the Lord's mercy. So when you please his dear ones, you will please him. It's like, you go to a government office. To get to that senior person, you need to first please the peon, or you need to please someone else. And then you end up getting an opportunity to get an audience with the senior most person. Similarly, it is here also wherein, if you please his devotees, please his dear ones, you will please the Lord. And that is where Prahlad is praying that not just he, but all living beings might engage in service to pure devotees, thus bringing them under that umbrella of the Lord's mercy. We'll go to the next verse, verse 53. Naivodvije para duratyaya vaitaranyas tvadviryagayana mahamrita magna chittaha shocetato vimukha chetasa indriyartha maya sukhaya bharam udvahato vimudhan. Translation. O best of the great personalities, I am not at all afraid of material existence, for wherever I stay, I am fully absorbed in thoughts of your glories and activities. My concern is only for the fools and rascals who are making elaborate plans for material happiness and maintaining their families, societies, and countries. I am simply concerned with love for them. So, on one side, Prahlad is fearless, but he's also worried. And he's worried not for himself, but for those who are absorbed in these illusions of the material world, family, society, material plans, happiness, etc. That's why he says, boldly, he says, I'm not at all worried about my own position. I'm worried about the fools and rascals engrossed in illusionary happiness. And he calls them Vimudhan, which is greatly foolish people, because they try to transform this Dukhalayam we are in into a Sukhalayam. It's not possible. We are in a house of misery. Is there any way that we can transform this house of misery into a place of permanent enjoyment? That's not possible. It has been created as a house of misery. There's no way you'll be able to transform it. So why does Prahlad remain unafraid? That's because his mind is fully absorbed in the Lord, in glorifying the Lord, in chanting the Lord's names. And so there is no room for any kind of material anxiety. So the bhakta similarly feels that bliss in chanting and hearing, in doing Shravanam and Kirtanam. But the Vaishnava, the true Vaishnava, will also grieve simultaneously for the other person's ignorance. So this is kind of a little bit of a paradox, On one side, there is personal fearlessness, but on the other side, there's universal compassion and fear for everyone else. So Prabhupada highlights that such advanced souls, they are simultaneously happy due to Krishna and unhappy due to the suffering in others. And he says that our goal is to emulate this mood, that is, cultivate fearlessness through devotion and selflessness through preaching. Let's move to the next verse where Prahlad rejects selfish liberation. Prayena deva munayah swavimukti kama maunam charanti vijane na parartha nishtha naitan vihaya kripana nan vimumuksha eko nanyam tvadasya sharanam brahmatonu paspashye. Translation. My dear Lord Narsimadev, I see that there are many saintly persons indeed, but they are interested only in their own deliverance, not caring for the big cities and towns. They go to the Himalayas or the forest to meditate with the vows of silence, Maunavrata. They are not interested in delivering others. As for me, however, I do not wish to be liberated alone. Leaving aside all these poor fools and rascals, I know that without Krishna consciousness, without taking shelter of your lotus feet, one cannot be happy. Therefore, I wish to bring them back to shelter at your lotus feet. So, Prahlad is contrasting his approach with, other ascetics who are actually selfish. They leave or they abandon the material environment they are in, and they choose to go far away into the mountains like the Himalayas for their own mukti and salvation. That is swavimukti. So, and he deems this kind of attitude as kripanand, which is miserly, because it is leaving behind so many souls, so many countless conditioned souls still in this darkness. This is the entire compassion of Prahlad Maharaj. So he's stating that there is only one way to be truly happy, which is when you're fully conscious about the Lord. He says, I know that without Krishna consciousness, without taking the shelter of your lotus feet, one cannot be happy. So his desire is not to hide away and go into the mountains, but instead he wants to go to the busiest parts of the world, the most difficult and challenging places, and help awaken that dormant Krishna consciousness in people. In our movement, of course, there's no bigger example for this than Srila Prabhupada, who went to the West and in such a difficult environment where people were completely impersonalist or atheists, he successfully transformed with that consciousness in so many thousands of people who became devotees, very, very senior devotees later on. So Prabhupada says real compassion means rolling up our sleeves and helping others find Krishna. He says that is the essence of Mahaprabhu's movement. Says a Vaishnava is a spiritual revolutionary. He is not a hermit. And Prahlad's teachings mood teaches us that if we have tasted Krishna's mercy, we must pass it on to those still wandering in ignorance. It's a direct message to us, each and every one of us who are practicing in KC, that we have a responsibility here. Then the next verse, Yanmaithunadi grahamedi sukham hitocham Kanduyanena karayor iva dukkha dukkham Tripyanti neha kripana bahu dukkha bhaja Kandutivan mana sijam vishaheta dhiraha. Translation. Sex life is compared to the rubbing of two hands to relieve an itch. Grihamedis, so-called grihasthas, who have no spiritual knowledge, think that this itching is the greatest platform of happiness, although actually it is a source of distress. Kripanas, the fools, who are just the opposite of Brahmanas, are not satisfied by repeated sensuous enjoyment. Those who are dhira, however, who are sober and who tolerate this itching, are not subjected to the sufferings of fools and rascals. Hare Krishna. Sagar Prabhu, I would request you to please mute yourself. Hare Krishna. So, Prahlad is directly here speaking about sense gratification. And such a young child is especially speaking about sex life, describing it as an itch that only worsens when scratched. You all must have experienced, your hand itches, you scratch it, and then you want to scratch it a little bit more. So the message there is that the more one indulges in that, the more frustration one will experience. It's a never-ending cycle, right? So, and Srila Prabhupada, in his purports, he references how modern society it idealizes sex life, sex pleasure. And he says that yet no one truly finds lasting peace in it. So if we are sober, if we are dhira, we refrain from stoking such flames. Instead, we channel that energy into loving devotion for Krishna. So there's a Yamunacharya's verse also that is quoted, and where he affirms that once one truly relishes spiritual rasa with Krishna, so Yamunacharya says that entire thought of material sex life becomes distasteful. I was just reading a little bit about Yamunacharya, but before he got that enlightenment, he was a very well-to-do person. And he says that now that very thought makes me spit in distaste. So the deeper we get immersed in bhakti, in that nectar of bhakti, the less we will crave fleeting sense pleasures. So attachment and detachment, Prabhujis and Matajis, is like, two sides of the same coin. So it's not that you just go in one path, which is detachment. Both the paths have to move in parallel. On one side, we do practice some austerities, the niyama and yama and niyama, the do's and don'ts, to practice some detachment. On the other side, also we need to attach ourselves to that higher pleasure that we are actually all seeking. And when you acquire that higher taste, automatically this lower tastes further go away. Those cravings will go away. So here Prahlada is guiding us to what is real happiness. He says that it's not in scratching, but it's in transcending those material urges through bhakti. Next verse. Maunavrata shrutatapo dhyayana swadharma व्याख्यारहो जप समाधय आपवर्ग्यः प्रायः परं पुरुषते त्व अजितेन्द्रियाणां वार्ता भवन्त्युत न मात्र तु दाम्भिकानाम्. Translation. O Supreme Personality of Godhead, there are 10 prescribed methods on the path to liberation. To remain silent, not to speak to anyone, to observe vows, to amass all kinds of Vedic knowledge, to undergo austerities, to study the Vedas and other Vedic literatures, to execute the duties of Varnashrama Dharma, to explain the Shastras, to stay in a solitary place, to chant mantras silently, and to be absorbed in trance. These different methods for liberation are generally only a professional practice and means of livelihood for those who have not conquered their senses. Because such persons are falsely proud, these procedures may not be successful. So he's listing all the various paths like silence, vows, austerity, etc. And he notes that that these are often adopted as just formalities, by those who haven't conquered their senses. Prabhupada says that these paths are beneficial. He doesn't say that these paths are not beneficial. He says that these paths are beneficial, but they are incomplete. Incomplete without what? Without bhakti. So, for instance, he said that this mauna, just being silent, it's not just to be completely quiet and don't talk. It's actually avoiding useless talk while positively engaging and glorifying the Lord. Just in the previous verse, as I had mentioned, it's not about detachment, but it's also about attachment to that higher purpose. So it's not about keeping quiet and observing Maunavrata and going into complete silence. It's about avoiding prajalpa, about avoiding useless talk on one side, and on the other side, engaging in glorifying the Lord like we are doing now. So it says, a vow of speechlessness is meaningless if one's heart is not absorbed in Krishna. And similarly, solitary meditation or scriptural study can become show bottle acts if not anchored in the love for the Lord. So it is very important that we have unalloyed devotional service. Ahaituki apratihata, it should be. Kevala bhakti. This transcends and perfects all other methods. So a sincere devotee who's there, who's engaging in this bhakti, he'll automatically gain the fruits of all other austerities, knowledge, and renunciation just by wholeheartedly serving Krishna and the devotees. So this is the elevator path to go up that yoga ladder. We move to the next verse. रूपे इमे सत् असति तव वेद सृष्टे बीजान्कुराव इव न चान्यद् पकस्य युक्ता समक्षम् उभयत्र विचक्षन्ते त्वाम् योगेन वह्निम् इव दारुषु नान्यतः स्यात्. Translation: by authorized Vedic knowledge, one can see that the forms of cause and effect in the cosmic manifestation belong to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or the cosmic manifestation is His energy. Both cause and effect are nothing but energies of the Lord. Therefore, O my Lord, just as a wise man by considering cause and effect can see how fire pervades wood, those engaged in devotional service understand how you are both cause and effect. So here Prahlad is declaring that everything that is cause and effect, it belongs to the Lord. So one has to be having that wisdom, that jnana, and then but that is when one will realize that the Lord's presence in all phenomena. We often think that we are the doers, forgetting that we are not the doers. Prakrite kriyamanani gune karmani sarvashah. Ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. So it is not visible. That supreme power might not be visible, and we come under the illusion that we are doing. Similarly, the fire is inherent within that wood, as he's saying, but is not always visible. So Prabhupada, he says that superficial spiritual practices like silence, like mechanical yoga, won't reveal this truth to us. That entire realization that the Lord is pervading everything will only come through devotional service. That is the only way for us to perceive Krishna, and that Krishna is behind every cause and effect, both good as we feel it in this material body or bad. Everything is coming because of Krishna, is happening because of Krishna. So the pure devotee is in that position from where he is able to see this. He sees that matter itself is Krishna's separated energy, and that the Lord remains that controller, supreme controller. We are not the controllers. That pure devotee will see everything that is happening in his life or in her life as part of the Lord's plan. And anything, whether it is good or whether it is bad, whether it is happiness or whether it is sorrow, it only results in a deepening of that devotional commitment to the Lord. Rather than blaming the Lord for something that has not happened well, or taking credit for something that has happening well, good. In that first canto of Bhagavatam, we see that even Arjuna says that after Krishna's departure, he is not able to go pick up the Gandiva. He's lost all his pravas. So from being the world's best archer, he gets defeated by some bandits. So this verse is teaching us on that mindset of acknowledging, Krishna's being the cause of effect for everything in our lives. And we'll be able to see that, we'll be able to see the Lord's presence only through bhakti and devotion. In the next verse, he speaks about the Lord's as all pervasive. Says, Tvam vayuragniravanir vyad ambumat matra pranendriyani hridayam ched anugrahascha sarvam tvam eva saguno vigunascha bhuman nanyattvadastyapi manovachasa niruktam. Translation: O Supreme Lord, you are actually the air, the earth, fire, sky, and water. You are the objects of sense perception, the life airs, the five senses, the mind, consciousness, and false ego. Indeed, you are everything subtle and gross. The material elements and anything expressed either by the words or by the mind are nothing but you. So this is the entire all-pervasive nature of the Supreme Lord. All the Panchabhutas, the senses, the mind are all expansions of his energies. Yet, he remains distinct. He's both one and the same and different at the same time. So Prabhupada, he references the Bhagavad Gita there. Maya tadam idam sarvam. That is, Krishna is spread throughout the entire creation. But creation does not itself limit him. So the ultimate knowledge is that while everything is Krishna's energy, he himself can be seen only through that pure devotion. So if we approach matter with a material mindset, we miss that divine presence. But the eyes of devotion let us see Krishna's hand in every aspect of existence. So Prabhupada, when he was, he used to sit awake in the night and record the lectures, and he mentions that, even that dictaphone he saw as, which was a material object, he thought that this could be put to spiritual service. So it's our choice, our approach, how we approach this material world. If we are going to be approaching it with a material mindset, we are bound to miss that entire divine presence. We'll nowhere be able to perceive that Lord. But when we approach everything in and around us, in all our engagements, in everything we do, every moment of our lives, if we are approaching that with a spiritual mindset, seeing Krishna's hand in everything, we will feel that also. So thus, a devotee who is advanced in that consciousness experiences the world as nothing but the Lord. But at the same time also recognizes his distinct personality as someone who is beyond this cosmic manifestation. There are two more prayers to go. We are now in the 49th verse. Naite gunano gunino mahad adayo ye sarve mana prabhrittayah sahadeva martyaha adyantavanta urgaya vidanti hiti tvam evam vimrishya sudiyo viramanti shabdat. Translation: neither the three modes of material nature, Sattva-guna, Rajaguna, Tamaguna, nor the predominating deities controlling these three modes, nor the five gross elements, nor the mind, nor the demigods, nor the human beings can understand your lordship, for they are all subjected to birth and annihilation. Considering this, the spiritually advanced have taken to devotional service. Such wise men hardly bother with Vedic study Instead, they engage themselves in practical devotional service. So this is a pretty bold statement that even the greatest scholarship you may have, the elemental mastery, whatever you might be good at, it cannot help you decode that Lord's mystery. There is only one solution, which is bhakti, devotion service. Nothing else can help you decode that Lord's mystery. And he says that after all, the demigods themselves are subject to birth and death. So what to speak of material scholars? So Prabhupada quotes the adage that once a devotee realizes Krishna, prolonged Vedic study becomes unnecessary. It's like turning off the lamp at sunrise. In night, we might need a candle. But once the sun has risen and the light filters through our windows, a candle or another light is not needed at all. It is of no use. I'm sure many of you might have experienced this, wherein you have forgotten to switch off your electric light in the daytime, which might have been glowing from the time when it was dark, but you've forgotten because you're not noticing that light anymore. So similarly, the wise, therefore, who have acquired that knowledge, they will renounce endless speculation or just pure academic Vedic learning, and they engage wholeheartedly in practical devotional service because they realize that once you get into that devotion, everything else becomes bright. So keep in mind that jnana or knowledge is important, but the master key is bhakti, because that will only open that final door. Only devotional service bhakti will help you open that final door for us. The 50th verse. Tattere hatama namah stuti ka karma puja karma smritis charanayo shravanam kathayam samsevaya tvai vineti shad angaya kim bhaktin jana paramahamsa gatau labheta. Translation. Therefore, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, the best of all persons to whom prayers are offered, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you without rendering 6 kinds of devotional service unto you: offering prayers, dedicating all the results of activities, worshipping you, working on your behalf, always remembering your lotus feet, and hearing about your glories. Prahlad, who can achieve that which is meant for the Paramahamsas? So Prahlad is listing 6 ways to serve the Lord. Says offering prayers, dedicating all the results of the activities, one's actions, whatever the results are, dedicate them to the Lord, worshipping the Lord, working on the Lord's behalf, always remembering the Lord's lotus feet, and hearing about his glories. So these 6 they kind of form a nucleus of bhakti, leading to that level of Paramahamsa, which he's saying. Those who have grasped the essence of all spiritual practices, that's a Paramahamsa. So Srila Prabhupada emphasizes that no amount of intellectual speculation can replace these direct, personal, and active forms of service. As you notice, each and every form of this particular 6 ways to serve the Lord of service are personal, direct, and active. And each of these limbs, whether it's offering a prayer, whether your dedication of your actions to him, whether it's worshipping, working on his behalf, each and every limb will draw your heart closer, one step closer to Krishna. And when you combine all of these, you will accelerate. You'll quickly gain that purity. You'll quickly gain a very strong conviction in Krishna consciousness. So it's not just about following one path. If you're doing one limb of this, that is also very good. But try to do more because that will help you accelerate your progress in Krishna consciousness. So this particular prayer also shows us that devotion is active, it can never be passive. So we must engage our mind, body, words, all our senses in that Lord's service. So now we'll move to the Lord's reaction now. So Narada Muni will now speak. He says, Narada Vacha एतावद् वर्णित गुणो भक्त्या भक्तेन निर्गुणः प्रारादं प्रणतं प्रीतो यतमन्युरभाषतः. Translation: The great saint Narada said, thus Lord Narasimhadev was pacified by the devotee Prahlad Maharaj. With prayers offered from the transcendental platform, the Lord gave up his anger, and being very kind to Prahlad, who was offering prostrated obeisances, he spoke as follows. So Narada Muni here is stepping in to summarize that the Lord, once blazing with rage, he was very angry, is now fully pacified by Prahlad Maharaj's heartfelt prayers. And his anger has melted in before the genuine devotion of his devotee. So in Prabhupada's purport, he highlights Nirguna, that the Lord is without material qualities, but is full of spiritual qualities. Thus, once the Lord sees a sincere devotee, he sets aside his formidable aspect. So that's the power of Bhakti, Prabhujis and Matajis. So on one side, demigods, all the cosmic powers, they cannot calm the Lord. They cannot pacify him. But just the simple, pure devotee's love can pacify the Lord. So this is hope for all of us, that the Lord might seem very far away, very majestic, in some forms he might be terrorizing to those non-devotees also, for the wicked people. But let's keep in mind that he is always kind and approachable if you are sincere. For that sincere devotee, he is always there. And Prahlad's devotion is a very good example that should give us this hope and confidence that our prayers, when we pray, to Narasimhadev, that can subdue even the fiercest anger of the Supreme. Now the Lord will start speaking. Sri Bhagavan Uracha Prarada Bhadra Bhadram Te Prito Hamte Surotama Varam Vrinishva Bhimatam Kama Puro Smya Aham Nrinam. Translation: The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Prahlada, most gentle one, best of the family of the Asuras, all good fortune unto you. I am very much pleased with you. It is my pastime to fulfill the desires of all living beings, and therefore you may ask from me any benediction that you desire to be fulfilled. So the Lord is acknowledging Prahlad as the gentle one, the most gentle one, the best of the Asuras. And is giving him a free rein to request any blessing. So how the Lord's mood has shifted, so from being a formidable protector who comes to protect his devotee, now he's an affectionate well-wisher in that same form. That's why he's known as Bhakta Vatsala. That he delights in fulfilling the devotee's desires. So question is, will Prahlad ask for material gains? Will Prahlad ask for personal gains? We'll see that in the subsequent verses in the later chapter also. So Prabhupada here says that if the Lord or his devotee is pleased, one naturally obtains all one could want. But the essence of bhakti is not to exploit that generosity, but to deepen one's loving service. So the invitation of the Lord sets the stage for Prahlad's shining example of selflessness. Hare Krishna. Continue reading. There are 2 more verses to go after this. Mam aprinata ayushman darshanam durlabham hime drishtva mam na punarjantur atmanam taptum arhati. Translation. My dear Prahlada, you may live a long time. One cannot appreciate or understand me without pleasing me. But one who has seen or pleased me has nothing more for which to lament for his own satisfaction. So the Lord is telling that now that you have pleased me and seen me, you need not lament for anything else. After you have experienced the Lord's personal presence or reciprocation, will there be any material hankering? Anything that we will be regretting? Have you ever thought about that? And Srila Prabhupada says that satisfying the Supreme Lord is the only way to find enduring happiness. Nothing else in this material world is enduring. It's all temporary. What happiness we perceive or what joys we perceive are all temporary, and I'm sure you have all experienced that. So wealth or material success can never quell or subdue that lamentation inside us fully. And that lamentation inside us, deep inside us, is we are actually in search of our true identity, that is the servant of God. But we are not able to see that. But once we realize that, and once we realize that, the unprecedented, the love and the shelter under the Lord's lotus feet, whatever worries, tribulations, anything that you might have in this material world will be very, very insignificant. So, seeing or pleasing the Lord grants the ultimate fulfillment. Please keep that in mind, because you are touching upon that real relationship of the soul with Krishna. And in this case, Prahlad is content with the gaze of Narasimhadev. That's all he wants. He doesn't want anything else. Next verse. Prinanti yata mam dhira sarva bhavena sadhava shreyaskama mahabhaga sarvasam ashishampatim. Translation. My dear Prahlada, you are very fortunate. Please know from me that those who are very wise and highly elevated try to please me in all different modes of mellows. For I am the only person who can fulfill all the desires of everyone. So Prahlad is being told that all the advanced souls, they please the Lord through different modes of mellows. So this could be, Dasya Rasa, Sakhya, Vatsalya, Madhurya. And as the Lord is the ultimate reservoir of all the rasas, and he only can fulfill them. So Prabhupada talks about Bhava and says that how that develops through stages until it blooms into prema, the pure love. So each devotee has a unique relationship with the Lord, he says. Some serve as a friend, like Arjuna, some as a parent in Vatsalya Rasa, like Yashodama, and like the gopis of Vrindavan in the Madhurya Rasa, etc. And in each rasa, the devotee's sole aim is to please Krishna. So what we here the Lord is telling that is not restricted. Access to him is not restricted in one type of devotion or mood. He reciprocates in infinite ways. And he fulfills the arts of the devotees across all the rasas that are there. So we need to understand this, because then it helps us also understand how we can lovingly approach Krishna. So Narada Muni will speak in this final verse, and we'll see what Prahlad Maharaj is, in which direction he's going. He's unshakable in devotion, and he rejects all the material wounds. So Narada Muni says, Sri Narada Vacha Evam pralobhyamanopi Loka pralobhanai Ekantitvad Bhagavati Naichattan Asurotama. Narada Muni said Prahlad Maharaja was the best person in the family of Asuras, who always aspire for material happiness. Nonetheless, although allured by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who offered him all benedictions for material happiness, because of his unalloyed Krishna consciousness, he did not want to take any material benefit or sense gratification. So, Prahlad is very clearly not desiring any of the boons that are offered by the Lord. He is quite consistent with his devotion. So, and Narada Muni is calling him the best person in the family of the Asuras. Because even among that materialistic surrounding he is in, Prahlad is still very steadfast in his bhakti. He's very centered in that devotional service to the Lord. And Prabhupada in his purport, he compares Prahlad's mood to that of Dhruva Maharaj, who after seeing the Lord found all material ambitions worthless. He compared it to broken pieces of glass. And he also speaks about the Shikshashtakam prayer, na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim, bhavatat bhaktera hetuki tvai. No wealth, no followers, no sense pleasures. Only unmotivated devotion is what I seek. So this final verse, it kind of cements the essence of Prahlad's prayers. The greatest devotee wants nothing from the Lord but the opportunity to serve the Lord. And that sets the gold standard for bhakti. So let us all refine our hearts to similarly offer unconditional love to Krishna. With that, I'll stop here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Any comments or uh, any questions, Prabhujis and Matajis? Please feel free to share. Hare Krishna.
Anandram Prabhu ki jai.
Giriraj Prabhu ki jai.
Prabhu, I like one thing.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, are you able to hear me?
Yes, Prabhu. Somebody,
Some disturbance. Some disturbance. Today, in our temple, New York City temple, every monthly youth festival they celebrate under Radhesham Prabhu only, Bhaktivedanta Youth Services. So that's where you are getting sound. Prabhu, I love the way you are presented. Each verse, you put the nice title, the context, the overview, in one statement, nicely reading and explaining from proper purpose and adding your own reflections and realizations. Very peacefully, nice flow. I joined little late, Prabhu, because of this program, but I love to hear. Thank you so much. Very nice. Another problem.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, excellent class.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. Class చాలా బాగుంది ప్రభు.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Class chala baundi means class is good. Telugu. You are speaking on mute, Prabhu. Your voice is not
okay, Prabhu, you can hear me now, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, Prabhu, no, I understand Prabhu Telugu also.
Telugu, super, very good. Nice.
Yeah. No, but all I was telling Prabhu that this chapter is so beautiful that when you read it, Prabhu, you just don't want to put it down. It's so nice. It's so just touches straight your heart.
So nice, as you also know that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu repeatedly wanted to hear from
Exactly,
disciples,
Prabhu. I was thinking about that yesterday only, Prabhu, that when you read this, you just want to repeatedly hear it, Prabhu, again and again. And
every time
so
new
hard to
happiness.
believe, so hard to believe that a child who's just 5 years old has gotten this such deep realizations, Prabhu. Such deep realization.
Krishna is there, right? Krishna through.
Yes, Prabhu.
Survive. Devotee of Krishna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu. Then we can conclude the class, Prabhu.
Yeah.
सिंधुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः अनंतकोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय हरे कृष्ण
Yeah.
हरे
Thank
कृष्ण
you.
थैंक यू सो मच
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji.
थैंक यू प्रभु हरे कृष्ण